I would like to reconvene and welcome you to the February 5th Davie County School Board meeting. The first item on the agenda is our invocation. Loving and gracious God, we thank you today for all your blessings, for the successful outcomes of our school events, and for all our staff members. We ask that you bless them abundantly, and we continue to seek your wisdom, guidance, courage, and strength. Be with us in our deliberations and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for the good of all of those who have placed their trust and confidence in us. Give us insight to lead with integrity, that our decisions may reflect what is good and right. Keep us from short-sightedness and pettiness. Help us to make decisions that are for the good of all and guard us from blind self-interest. Dear Lord, grant us the humility to always seek your will in all that we do and say. Amen. Next item on the agenda, I believe, is our Pledge of Allegiance, and we are going to be led tonight by Brownie Troop 13207. Thank you, guys. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our January 8th meeting. I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion by Ms. Smith. I have a second by Colonel Hales. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the important dates, and I will go over a few. This Thursday, in this room, we have the Davie County Spelling Bee at 3:30. February 19th, we start with our Parent Advisory Council meetings at Coolamy Elementary School at 5:30. Then the 21st, we have a Board of Education lunch at Crenancer Elementary. And the 28th, we have our next Parent Advisory Council, and that is at Davie County High School at 5:30 p.m. Then March 4th, Board of Commissioners meeting, and we're back in here on March 5th. 2019 is on its way. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Steed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome everyone tonight. Glad to see you all here. I would just like to report on a few items that I've been working on since last month. I did have the opportunity to sit with Mr. Wallace and Ms. Haynes as we reviewed with the principals their plans for the remainder of the year, where they were with the evaluations, personnel issues of any kind that might be there, but it gave me frankly, it probably was the most helpful to me of anybody in the room, because the two of them had already had those conversations, but it gave me an insight of what has been happening the first semester. We're very fortunate with the folks that we have as principals in this county, and I would just say that was an excellent time for me, frankly, to get to know them better. And I followed that up with some time that I spent with each of them in their schools. I was very quick to point out to them I would much rather be in the school than I had in the office, and that gave me a chance to learn a little more about them, the ones that I didn't know quite as well as a chance to spend some time in walking around the school and showing and seeing the needs of those particular buildings. So those two activities have really helped me, I won't say get back in the swing of things, but certainly got me to realize what all we have left to do the rest of the school year. The other thing that I would mention, and I'll recognize Ms. Haynes, if you would now, you have no doubt seen and read, heard of a grade issue problem in the state with reporting of grades. We could sit here and bore you for a long, long time about that information, and I don't think you really want to hear it. But what I would like for you to know is how we chose to go about correcting those issues. It was a problem from Raleigh that our folks got an opportunity to deal with and correct, and they handled it as they usually do. So, Jen, I'll let you, if you would, please.
Opportunity is a nice word. As you all know, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction provides software to us called PowerSchool. And districts use that for student information. We use that to set up teacher grade books for our grading, for our report cards, all of that information. It also allows parents to go into a parent portal and be able to view and monitor the grades and attendance throughout the semester or the year. Within that PowerSchool software, there's more than one grade book set up as an option, and DPI had specifically recommended a particular setup at the beginning of this school year. So earlier in this month, Erin Full called. Erin is our Director of Accountability and Student Information, and she alerted us about concerns about how that grade book was set up and how she had been advised to use that. But it was a situation where it's rounding earlier in the calculation of the grade book versus later. So when you think about how a teacher might set up categories with maybe tests and quizzes and classwork and homework, whether you round earlier at the category level or whether you round at the end of the calculation makes a little bit of a difference. So this impacted 109 districts across the state, about 10 to 20% of students. For us, that was a little over 1,000 students. And for the majority of our students impacted, it meant that their grade was 1 point higher or 1 point lower because of the timing of that rounding. It's just a matter of calculating that differently. As you know, we take student grades very seriously, and we want those to be as accurate as possible. So within the last couple weeks, Erin and her department have worked countless hours. I would not venture to guess. Not only studying this problem, but working with teachers to correct quarter one grades and making sure that our quarter two and semester grades were accurate. Parents of students at the high school as well as at our middle schools that were affected received school messenger calls if their grades were impacted. But I just want to say kudos to Erin and her staff again for being on top of this and for working so hard to make sure that our grades are accurate. If you have specific questions, technical questions, I would love for Erin to come to the podium and be able to answer those because I will not be able to do that part.
I don't know if it's technical or not, I don't think so, but realizing that DPI, the problem existed at DPI, and of course, we followed instructions in compliance with DPI, and then we caught an error and we reported it to DPI. Has DPI corrected with all of those other locations, all of this?
Districts across the state have been in the same situation as us,
Wow.
trying to make these corrections.
Sure. Well, really, the great thing to me is that Davie County was aggressive at identifying the problem. And once identified, they were very aggressive in fixing the problem. And yet, during the course of all of that, kept the parent informed. So that's a good thing. Good for Davie County. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I have a question because we got the email.
Yes.
So their current grades, that's been corrected. Okay.
Yes, what is currently showing in PowerSchool to parents and to students is the corrected grade. So what you see in your Q1 for a student is the correct grade.
Okay, and same for Q2?
Yes.
Okay.
Because Q2 was never published before we found the problem, the Q2 grade was never truly incorrect. You could see it and you may have seen an adjustment, but the teachers were also finalizing grades and putting in assignments,
Okay.
so you probably would have never noticed a difference.
So Q3 is good?
Yes,
Okay.
Q3 is good. We have fixed the problem in the
here on.
background and it will calculate correctly from now on.
y'all got to work with me on this mic. I too would like to thank Erin for the work, the extra things that she did, and I wish we could pay you for all the extra time that you spent, but you fixed it. Thank you. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Our next item agenda is the consent agenda, and before we entertain a motion, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Naylor.
The federal grants fund is increasing by $49,579, as you see on the summary page. But on the detail attachment, the revenue item was not increased by that amount. So it should increase just like the expenses increased by the $49,579 to bring it to the $3,304,532.
So correct me, there's no modification to the actual agenda item that we're voting on, it's just the support.
Correct.
Okay. With that said, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I so move.
I have a motion by Mr. Carroll. I have a second. I have a second by Ms. Smith. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a public address to the board.
Board members, no one would like to speak with you this month, except me, and we'll stay after, and I'll tell you all kinds of things that are on my mind. But you have no one signed up for public comment.
Thank you. Next, we have committee staff reports, and I'll turn it over to Jeff Wallace to talk about draft calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board, you will see in your packet there, we are presenting the Davie County Early College High School calendar to you and for information. And we have, staff has worked with Ms. Absher and their staff to put together the calendar. And if there are any questions now or between now and when you guys will consider voting to approve that next board meeting, I will be glad to entertain any of those.
Any questions so far?
Mr. Chairman, if I could add one thing here, an update to pertaining to the calendar bill. As most of you are probably aware that Representative Julia Howard introduced House Bill 13 on the first day of when the legislature was back in session, which we're very appreciative of that. I know that she reached out to and gathered some information in regards to before she presented that, but I do want to commend her. If you've read the papers, it may be up against a big hurdle, but at the same time, we're hopeful that that will happen. Now, one thing I want to make sure you read, and Dr. Steed has pointed this out to me twice. He said, "Jeff, did you read the last line of that bill?" And I said, "I sure did." And it said this bill will be effective for the 1920 calendar. So, if it crosses that huge hurdle, we're going to have to consider adjusting our 1920 calendar that we have posted. So if there's any thoughts or comments there, I know, Mr. Junker, I'm with you. So I don't know that we just have to think through that, and I'll be glad to follow your lead or guidance on that, however you advise. Yes, sir, Mr. Dressler.
Do you remember I asked, was there going to be any issues about those dates? I believe it was last month.
I do, and I remember you had some good points, and the point there is we have an expectation by our stakeholders to post our calendar. Therefore, we followed that timeline like we always do, because there are schools and folks that are getting calls now. When's spring break next year? When is we getting starting school with those things? Sitting here today, I think it's going to be very difficult to go back and retract that calendar that we have now posted. I do. I think that would be difficult.
And just a further comment about the calendar, I think there were 17 school systems that sent a letter through the School Board Association to the General Assembly, so it's not just us.
No.
So,
That's correct.
yeah.
Yeah. So we're hopeful, and then if we do cross that hurdle, we'll come back and we'll figure out a way to make this thing work. Good? Okay, thank you.
Can. So anyway, if it comes back approved, is there room to negotiate for them to change the date to the following school year? Or do we have to accept what is in that package?
Dr. Steve, anybody can jump in here, but I think that would give us the option. You're the one. The General Assembly sets the law, but we have to approve, you all, the board has to approve the calendar.
Correct.
So therefore, if that bill passes, which I would shout to the heavens for sure.
Sure.
But at the same time, I think we would probably be wise to wait a year before we did that. And that would give us ample amount of time to communicate to our stakeholders as we've said.
And in turn, we wouldn't have to go back to the state and necessarily announce that. We'd just do it amongst the Board of Education, period.
That's
For Davie
correct.
County.
Yes, sir.
Makes good sense. Thank you.
As much as we want that calendar flexibility, I think we would have that flexibility that to do what we need to do, what's right here. I think it would defeat the whole purpose of giving us the flexibility if we don't use it. I think the realistic part about this went to committee. If you believe in what the article said, which I don't, but if you believe what the article said, it's going to be an uphill battle to get it passed this time. There's still a tremendous lobby out there from the eastern part of the state. So I think we need to be realistic about the chances of it passing, but I don't want to give up on it. And I think we've got to work with that and work towards that flexibility as soon as we can. It's kind of like that deal. I don't know I wanted it that fast, however, but if we get it, let's fix it.
Thank you. Next item goes back to Jeff Wallace and War Eagle Sand Volleyball.
All right, thank you, Chairman Junker. If I could have a little help from the technology crew here. All right, folks, I'm excited board to share with you and guests. What you're seeing there is, in the backdrop there, that's the concession stand and the bleachers at War Eagle Stadium. And you're seeing 3 sand volleyball courts that are not in place yet, but this is a growing sport across the nation and particularly in North Carolina. And we've had some folks that show some interest in this. So what we typically do in high school is we hold interest meetings. And that was done probably about a year ago, and there was quite the turnout. And this sport, sand volleyball, will be for both male and female teams. And Coach Amber Brandon, our volleyball coach, and Mike Absher, athletic director, held the interest meeting, and there was well over 40 students attended. And next, we had a group of parents that got involved, and once they started talking about fundraising, we got with the Athletic Boosters Club, because we don't want to cross lines or interfere with our efforts to raise funds how our athletic and band boosters do anyway. So we got together, and this group of parents went to work, and I will sit here and proudly say, and I had nothing to do with it other than just help logistically and say yes, 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 but they have committed at $47,000 already. Now, Vulcan Materials has kicked in and made a donation of rock and stuff. That's going to be right at almost $15,000 worth. We plan to begin construction soon, as in the next week or two. And why the hurry? Because the spring season starts in the next few weeks. So there are, last year, there were 50 high schools in the state of North Carolina that had a sand volleyball team. And there are approximately, there's probably 7 or 8 within driving distance of us. The farthest probably being Mount Airy, Page, Reynolds, East Forsyth, West Forsyth, Reagan. Most everyone in our conference, I believe North Davidson has a sand volleyball team. One thing I want to make sure you close attention to is why 3 courts? Because if you have 3 courts, you can host regionals, and therefore it can become a revenue generator. So that's our goal, is that and I will have to say, this group has gotten together, is really doing it the right way. What we're looking at there's it's a turnkey job. I mean, it's outstanding, right at probably $80,000 to $100,000 worth of value in those 3 courts and the equipment and things. You'll see the parking that's already there, of course, and then restrooms are right there, is easily very accessible, so it fits in nicely. If you'll look as I'm looking at the picture to the right, you see the tennis courts over there to the right-hand side of the picture, and that grass area is where we will expand for additional tennis courts in the future, so it does not hinder that at all. So I will be glad to entertain any questions or anything.
And I will interject too. I've been involved in it, but just to clarify, this was one of the earlier renderings, and the location is right and everything, but that they will all be one sand court. I mean, it'll all be one piece. There won't be a sidewalk going in between, and there won't be grass in between, and there'll be a fence around the whole 3 courts as well. But it has been amazing. Being involved in it, I was just sort of like, yeah, boy, that'd be great. I love the sport, love playing, and had no idea it would take off the way that it has, and the community and interest, and it's amazing. So anyway.
I have a question. Excuse me. With regard to the $47,000 that was raised through the fundraiser and the $15K approximately cost for the gravel, do you foresee any residual costs that we would pay for? And I heard you say an estimate of $100,000 in value, but could we expect any kind of residual coming to us down the road based on the construction of this?
Typically not, and I'm not an expert at this, but we are putting the correct drainage underneath, which is what we were extremely strongly advised to do. That's where the donation from Vulcan really comes into play. We're putting the drainage underneath. The system is right there nearby. Michael Spillman's been involved from day one. So again, getting the water, don't let it become a mud hole. And we're making real efforts to make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah. So I don't anticipate that. The equipment, the netting and things is probably the least expensive. The most expensive is the sand. Yeah. And having to have 2.5 to 3 feet or somewhere in there of sand, that's what costs the most. But we're putting borders around it, the appropriate bordering, if you will, that's safe, but at the same time, it keeps the sand in where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So we don't anticipate that.
I was looking at the plans up there earlier today and looked at the drainage factor and the depth that they're going to put it down and so forth. So I got that. Yep. Okay. So we don't expect any residual cost?
No, we do not. As a matter of fact, we're going to host the high school is going to host a volleyball tournament under the lights, not here, but on the football field. Now, that's a grass tournament, of course, not sand, but those are very popular. And you may see, we may use all flat ground if we get enough teams. And there's organizations that will help you with those nettings, but my point of why I'm saying that is we expect that to be a very large event as well, and that'll be another revenue generator. Some excitement and playing volleyball under the lights.
Good, that's good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is this a NCHSAA sanctioned sport?
Great question, Mr. Potts. I should have mentioned that. At this time, it's a club sport, like most of these start. And I'm not sure of the number of schools that will have sand volleyball next year, but once you reach a certain percentage, I think it's 50% of schools across the state that are doing it, then it becomes a sanctioned sport. But it is, for next year, it'll be a club sport, like our lacrosse team started.
You sort of took the next question out of my mouth. Is lacrosse still a club sport?
No, sir. It's a varsity, it's a sanctioned sport. Okay. I mean, it was sanctioned prior to us starting it, but we started as a club for a few years.
Are we paying for the coaches?
Yes.
Okay. And what about with the volleyball? Who's paying for the coaches?
The school would pick up the expense of the coaches, yes. It'd be one for each team.
So there would be expenses
Okay, yes, I'm
incurred.
sorry. That would be an addition, an ongoing, recurring cost, yes, the coaching. Yes, sir.
And what about the insurance liability for the students?
We pay one fee, but based upon the number of athletes each year.
So it does cover club
It covers
sports?
it. Yes, sir.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a cash flow that's available for the board that accounts for the costs and who's responsible for them and any anticipated revenues?
When you ask me about cash flow, well, I will
Yes.
tell you this, the money that has been raised is anytime, typically when you do
Yeah,
this, goes
that's-
through the booster club.
That's revenue. But then also the cost and who's responsible for them.
Well, the cost will be, the boosters club will pay the cost of this.
Okay, is there a cash flow available, an analysis of this that's on paper?
Not that I'm aware of. Nothing's been paid for yet, or nothing has started
No,
yet.
that would be part of the plan, I would think. I mean, wouldn't you have one if you were doing a private project yourself?
I may, if I was doing it myself, but
Yeah.
that's, again, the Boosters Club is a separate entity that would handle this.
Right, but the
And
school's
they're-
gonna
they
be,
do
in-
keep revenue, I mean, their revenue flow and their sheets, what are the sheets called? Their what?
expenses?
Yes, yes. And, yes, so they have, and they're audited every year and those types of things. I'm not sure if I'm getting
Okay,
to where you.
Do we know what the burden is, if any, as far as cost upon the school?
At this point, the only thing I can tell you that would be cost would be the ongoing for coaches and uniforms, like every other team. Now, there could be some, eventually you'll have to do something about the nets and replace with some of those, like you do any other sport. But those get placed on a rotation each year. But
Okay,
again,
I
it
guess-
generates money. I mean, it generates, and when we generate funds into general athletics, and then the Boosters Club provides money to the school each
Right,
year,
Right,
and that's how those things are paid for each year.
okay. but-
Typically.
But there's no breakdown in terms of the cash flow anticipated, like a budget. This is the construction cost, these are the ongoing costs, in detail. These are the revenues that will be coming in from the Boosters Club, from the school, from whoever. Contributions that have already been made from Vulcan or whoever, they're worth something. There's nothing like that.
There's, here, I hope I'm not trying to avoid your question. Here's what I know. There's been approximately 47,000 committed. And to my understanding, there's been 31 of that put in hand being deposited and deposited by the Athletic Boosters Program. Michael Spillman has been involved, our maintenance director, with helping to lay out the plan. There's been architects, or not architects, but engineers involved in the plan. We know what it will cost us. We've got plans, as you can see at the very top up there, some of what the bedding needs to look like. But do I have laid out line item by line item? I wouldn't, because I'm not doing that. Now, again, this is, when you fundraise and raise money for a project, we have to approve the project and make sure it fits into doesn't interfere with electrical, drainage, whatever, and we've done all of that.
Right.
The only recurring cost that, again, that I'm aware of now would be equipment, uniforms, and those types of things.
And that's all budgeted now in the current budget?
No, it's not in this budget right now,
Okay.
no.
Not
So
allocated.
typically with a club team, this may help. Mr. Potts mentioned about the club teams, the lacrosse team started as club. What we did, we took the gate money, and that helped create revenue for that team. Initially, the girls and the boys paid for their own uniforms. We purchased the helmets because they had to be sanctioned. I'm kind of veering off here, but to help hopefully help understand or clarify, the gate money helps create some revenue for these sports. Now, again, it shouldn't be very expensive. We already have volleyballs and those types of things. So, but to your very point, it will go into the budget, the athletic budget, the next year. that we will know, all right, the girls may purchase, the guys purchase uniforms this year. Once it becomes a sanctioned sport, we will be responsible, we being the school system, will be responsible for purchasing. It go into rotation, that gets budgeted. Any type of equipment, the wear and tear on equipment, it does get budgeted, yes.
But there's no pro forma of that at this point,
No.
okay?
Any other questions? Thank you very much for the update. Next item is the curriculum state bonuses, and Ms. Haynes.
Good evening, Chairman Junker, board members. I'm going to ask technology to help get some slides up here for us regarding teacher bonuses. We talked about this last year, maybe a little bit the year before, so we're 3 years into teacher bonuses at this point. If I can make this work. So to give you a little bit of background, teacher bonuses or pay for performance is based on how students performed on state standardized tests the previous year. So the bonuses that teachers received the end of January this year are based on last year's test scores. They appear to reflect areas that are prioritized by our state legislature. So as you look at this list, they are in blue and red for a reason. Those in blue came to us 2 years ago. They were part of the original teacher bonuses that came out in 2016-17. And then last year, they expanded teacher bonuses to 4th through 8th grades. As you can tell, again, we think this reflects priorities from the state and wonder if they will continue to expand, but really don't have information about that. We started with 3rd grade reading associated with Read to Achieve, CTE credentials, and then AP testing. As you know, the state pays for AP tests at this point, started that several years ago, so that's the reason for that statement. And then last year, adding 4th and 5th grade reading and math in all middle grade areas. No changes this year as far as expansion. The only real change that we've seen is some slight reduction in the amounts that the state gives us for each one of those, and we can look at that. One rule as far as these teacher bonuses is that the teacher must remain in the LEA, so they have to be with us at the time that the bonuses are paid, the end of January. So to give you an overview, the state-funded bonuses for Davie County Schools teachers, almost $163,000. There's an exact amount listed there for you. In our district, there were 51 teachers who earned and were eligible for bonuses based on last year's data. Notice the terms earned and were eligible for. We may have had other folks who earned it, but they weren't with us January 31st, if they retired, if they changed to LEAs. So these are the ones who earned and were eligible. And the bonuses ranged from $100 to $8,000, which is a significant range, as you can see. And we'll look at that breakdown a little bit. So first of all, looking at the elementary level. Again, 3rd grade is really focused on reading. Again, related to Read to Achieve. The elementary bonuses are based upon student growth in reading and or math. So not proficiency, but student growth. So if I were a 3rd grade teacher and my students' growth ranked in the top 25% of the state, you see the number there, $3,251. If I'm in the top 25% of the LEA of the district, it's another $3,159.46. So I could have gotten one or the other or both. So you see the maximum bonus there over to the right in green. For 4th and 5th grade, teachers are eligible in both reading and math, so they could have had a bonus from $2,000 all the way up to $8,000. So some of those were our big winners. Go ahead, question?
Those dollar amounts, would that be the same dollar amount if we had 50 teachers that were eligible and earned? And would it be the same if we had 100 teachers that were eligible and earned?
Yes.
So there's not a pot of money of which is divided out amongst all?
No, the state sets the amounts. It's not that they send us a pot of money and we divide it up. They tell us how much for each one of these categories. Now, the only catch to that is you being in the top 25% of your LEA is going to limit how many teachers could actually earn that. Does that make sense? Okay. So there were 22 elementary teachers, 6 in third grade, 9 in fourth grade, and 7 in fifth grade who received bonuses based on last year's growth in reading and/or math. And you see that the total for elementary bonuses was over $109,000. So this is where the bulk of the bonuses went, with the average being almost $5,000. But again, these could be as low as $2,000, as high as $8,000 for these teachers. So we jump to middle school, and middle school is math only, but it is still focused on student growth. In this case, again, we're looking at growth being in the top 25% of the state or the top 25% of the LEA, or both. So again, the range would be a $2,000 bonus would be the least, or the maximum would be $4,000, depending on how they ranked. So we had 10 math teachers who earned a middle school math bonus, 2 in sixth grade, 5 in seventh grade, and 3 in eighth grade, with their bonuses totaling $34,000, with an average, of course, $3,400. But again, that would either be a 2 or a 4, but that gives you an idea of how many got which. And then finally, our high school bonuses. Our high school bonuses are much less than the elementary and middle school bonuses, and they are based upon proficiency versus growth. So that makes them a little bit different. They are capped at $3,500. They did increase that last year, so the cap has gone up a little bit, but you'll see that that totaled $19,600 with an average of $1,031.58. They range from $100 all the way up to $3,350. So to look at that, again, just the categories of CTE, our career and technical education, and AP, and these are done very differently. In CTE, these courses have credentials that are oftentimes associated with them. But I say that kind of loosely because in many cases, there are credentials that our students could earn that are not necessarily aligned with the standards or the curriculum. So this is not a perfect science. And within those CTE credentials, there are 3 tiers. And again, the state priorities show through. So if you teach a course that has Tier 1 credentials, you get no bonus. Tier 2 credentials get $25 per student who passes that credential or earns that credential, and Tier 3 gets $50 per student who earns that credential. So again, a significant range there. And then in AP, we have 10 teachers who earned bonuses with AP. We offer 10 different AP courses face-to-face and many others virtually through North Carolina VPS, and they earn $50 per student who passes or scores a 3, 4, or 5 on that exam. And I guess what we really need to close with is certainly congratulations to the teachers who earn these bonuses, but also a big acknowledgement that it takes a village. There are lots of folks who aren't eligible for these bonuses because they teach other subjects, other grade levels. And so we want to acknowledge that it certainly takes a village, and we appreciate all the staff who contribute to the growth and achievement of our students. Sure.
I'm a sixth grade teacher, and I have assumed responsibility for fifth graders coming in that were real underachievers. My friend is a sixth grade teacher, and he had the reverse. He got some real achievers. So at the end of the year, while I, with the underperformers, really had significant gains, I didn't get anything, but my friend did. Is that accounted for at all in the?
Yes, because again, this is based on growth. And so people will argue in some cases that it's harder to grow a high student versus a low student. We can argue that in both directions, but it is about student growth, not proficiency.
Okay, so it's not
Yes.
what they get on the test
Right.
at the end, it's how they, I got you.
It's their growth measure.
Thank you.
So it's really positive that it is about growth in elementary and middle
Yes.
school, but again, the high school level is about proficiency.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll echo your remarks about the whole team, and it's great to get rewarded, but there's a lot of people that part of that. So
Not many people know it, but I understand that the teachers that won the bonus shared it with all those other people, right?
I'm not sure how to respond to that.
Just smile, you did good.
I think I might keep it a secret if I were a teacher, because I would be concerned that someone else might give me the stink eye because they didn't get it.
Thank you. Last item on our agenda is our adjournment. I'll open it up if anybody has any closing remarks.
May I just offer congratulations to Ms. Horn? Her small business of the year at the chamber last week, I guess it was. So that's quite an achievement, and we're proud to be associated with you.
Your presentation was real good stuff, and it was reporting about people that, through their efforts and their work, elevated children at this level and got them to this level. And I don't think there are any teachers in the room tonight. They're all administrators. But my hat's off, my pat's on the back to you for organizing classroom size and sharing of teachers' assistants and just orchestrating what you do in the schools to allow teachers to teach. There's so many teachers and so many situations where it's easy to get bogged down with stuff, but you've got some really good teachers and you've done a good job of getting them into the right group and the right group with the right people at the right time to make things happen, to allow these people to have been able to progress the students along the path that they won bonuses. But hats off to you folks for what you're doing, leading your schools. Thank you.
With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I have a motion by Ms. Horn. I have a second by Colonel Hales. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Have a great evening. Thank you very much.